Welcome to this 365 Freedom Strategy session. Today we're breaking down the mechanics of aligned presence and why your brand, the biggest bottleneck, is your need to perform.
Right, and we are stepping in today strictly as your internal strategic partners. We're looking directly at your operational strategy through the lens of the architecture of aligned presence framework. And the foundational premise we are starting with, the non-negotiable rule here, is that visibility grows when how you show up matches who you truly are.
Exactly. And just to set the agenda up front, we aren't here to give you another generic marketing pep talk. This is an analytical breakdown. We are looking at the tangible tension between performance and expression.
And we'll be breaking down a very specific case study for this, the Drained Creator, to actually map out the mechanics of that tension.
Yeah, and more importantly, we have to establish a technical distinction that I see founders get wrong constantly. I mean, they completely misunderstand the difference between the mere mechanical behavior of showing up and the actual reality of presence.
Because the reality is, your current communication strategy might be actively working against your business goals right now. It's creating drag.
So let's start with the primary trap. It's this pervasive assumption we see founders make all the time, this idea that a filtered or hyper-professional version of themselves is a prerequisite for online visibility.
The suit of armor.
Right, the suit of armor. They think that to be taken seriously, to generate real authority in the market, they have to adopt this highly sterilized persona. It's basically the belief that your natural state just isn't robust enough.
The psychology behind it is completely understandable, but operationally, it is a disaster. It's a defense mechanism, really. In practice, what happens is founders start adopting these phrases, vocabulary they would never use in a real-life conversation.
Never.
You sit down to write an email to your list, and suddenly you're using words that feel totally foreign to your actual cadence. You force a tone that directly conflicts with your natural energy.
I see this constantly. You'll have someone who is incredibly direct on a Zoom call. I mean, they just get straight to the point, very concise, but then they go online and force themselves to write these meandering, highly emotional posts.
Because they think that's what the algorithm demands. They think that's what a thought leader sounds like.
Exactly.
And what they're doing is creating massive internal friction. You are adopting a persona that takes active, conscious energy to maintain. You're not communicating anymore. You are managing a character.
But let me push back slightly on that, just to play devil's advocate. Shouldn't there be at least some level of a professional filter? I mean, a lot of founders would argue you can't just be totally unpolished. We aren't telling people to stream their unfiltered consciousness.
No, of course not.
Yeah.
But we have to distinguish between having professional boundaries and operating through a fabricated filter. Boundaries are healthy. They dictate what you share. A filter dictates how you share it. And usually, it alters your authentic voice to do so. When you try to sound like an archetype of a successful creator, or you try to mimic the polish of a massive corporate brand, you aren't elevating yourself. You're producing a polished imitation.
A polished imitation.
Yeah.
And that leads right into what the research calls the dilution effect. Let's unpack that because it's a critical concept for anyone listening. The assumption is that by mimicking a highly visible tone, you'll draft off that success.
But it actively dilutes your core message. You are introducing noise into the signal. Think about the volume of communication the average professional processes daily. Thousands of emails, posts, ads. The human brain is exceptionally skilled at pattern recognition to handle that volume.
Highly attuned to detecting anomalies.
Yes. Audiences have a highly calibrated radar for authenticity.
They can just sense when something is off, even if they can't articulate it.
Exactly. When a founder's true identity and their performed persona are disconnected, it creates this subtle, almost subconscious friction for the reader. The audience registers that something is fundamentally artificial. It's like looking at a photo that's been heavily retouched.
You don't know which pixels were altered, but your brain knows it's not reality.
Right. And that disconnect inherently weakens your visibility because it prevents trust from forming. Trust requires a solid surface to grip onto. A performed persona is slippery.
Which brings us to the psychological weight for the creator themselves. There's a profound difference between performing and expressing. If showing up online feels heavy to you, there's usually one reason for it. You are performing.
That word heavy is so precise. It speaks directly to the metabolic cost of maintaining a facade.
It implies a burden.
A load you have to carry around. When you express yourself naturally, communication flows from a place of equilibrium. It doesn't take extra cognitive load to figure out how you should sound. But when you perform, every single piece of content requires you to first boot up this artificial persona.
It's exactly like running a heavy background application on your phone. It drains the battery even when you aren't actively using it.
That is the perfect way to look at it. You're running your ideas through a translation layer. You ask yourself, would my persona say it this way? Is this word corporate enough? That translation layer is exhausting.
And as your strategic partners, we have to emphasize this reality. Your audience does not want an impressive performance. They demand a clear, honest version of you.
Because a performance keeps the audience at a distance. They're just sitting in the dark watching you on a stage. It doesn't build connection.
Let's ground this theory in the actual case study we pulled from the source material, the drained creator. This micro-story really illustrates the operational failure of the performance trap. We have a creator whose initial symptom was extreme exhaustion, completely depleted by their online presence.
Ready to walk away from their audience entirely.
And this is where the misdiagnosis happens. When founders hit this wall, they almost always blame the workload, don't they?
Almost 100% of the time. They think, I'm burning out because I'm posting 3 times a week or writing a daily newsletter. They look at the volume of output.
But the exhaustion wasn't the workload.
Not at all. The physical workload is usually entirely manageable. Typing a 300-word post does not cause clinical burnout. The exhaustion comes from the heavy tax of showing up in ways that don't feel like them, using a voice that clashes with their personality.
It's an identity burnout, not a capacity burnout.
Precisely. They weren't tired of typing, they were tired of pretending.
So what did the pivot look like for this creator? Because the fear is that if you drop the professional mask, your audience leaves. They think you're unpolished and the business suffers.
The pivot happens the second the performance is dropped. For this creator, they stopped running ideas through that exhausting translation layer. They shifted to sharing content that felt natural, using their real, unvarnished voice. They stopped trying to sound like a textbook.
And the data on the shift is what's really remarkable here. The metrics didn't just stabilize, they actually grew.
Which always surprises people.
Oop. You drop the highly engineered strategy, you speak naturally, and engagement goes up. The audience response shifted and became noticeably warmer.
And we need to define warmer in a strictly business context here. It sounds like a soft metric. It is not. Warmer engagement is highly structural. It means higher quality interactions.
Thoughtful comments instead of just emojis.
Exactly. It means a shorter distance between the audience encountering your content and actually trusting your authority. When you drop the performance, you remove the barrier you place between yourself and them. You're no longer asking them to interact with a corporate shield.
You're inviting them to interact with a human being. And the strategic outcome for the drain creator was that visibility deepened specifically because the presence finally felt aligned. It went from a draining chore to a highly sustainable practice.
And sustainability is the ultimate goal. If your strategy relies on an unsustainable expenditure of energy,
like maintaining a false persona.
right, then it's not a strategy, it's just a countdown to a breakdown. You cannot scale a facade. Eventually, the structural integrity fails.
Which brings us to the critical technical distinction of this entire framework. We have to separate the concept of showing up from the concept of presence.
These terms get thrown around interchangeably all the time in marketing, but structurally, they are completely different animals.
Let's get really precise here. Showing up is merely the behavior. It's the mechanical act. Opening your laptop, typing the post, turning on the camera, hitting send. It is a necessary action. You can't have visibility without distribution.
But the behavior alone is entirely insufficient. Showing up is just the vehicle. It's the truck delivering the cargo. Presence is the identity behind the behavior.
It's the core truth.
Yes. The natural tone, the grounded place the message originates from. Presence is the actual cargo inside the truck.
Okay, but I know what listeners are thinking right now. There's this massive school of thought promoted by some very loud voices that consistency is the only thing that matters. Just show up. Feed the algorithm. Doesn't the sheer volume of behavior eventually win out?
That is a dangerous oversimplification. And it leads straight back to the burnout we just talked about. Yes, the algorithm favors volume. But the algorithm doesn't buy your services?
The algorithm doesn't sign contracts.
Humans do. You can show up every single day, execute the behavior flawlessly, and if you lack presence, you're just adding to the noise. You are transmitting data, but you aren't communicating. You're a highly active ghost in their feed.
And that's where the friction of misalignment occurs. When your behavior and your identity are misaligned, you create immense tension. You're showing up doing the behavior, but relying on the false identity.
That combination creates the heaviness. forcing yourself to do the mechanical labor while carrying the psychological weight of a performance. It creates operational drag on the entire business. You are burning fuel just to keep the engine from stalling.
But when these two elements sync up, everything shifts. The operational benefits are immediate. When you align behavior with presence, showing up becomes lighter. Content creation feels easier.
Because you eliminated the translation layer. You aren't spending cognitive energy figuring out how someone else would say it. You are communicating your expertise in your voice.
And the message resonates more deeply because it's anchored. It's not a performance to evaluate. It's a reality they can connect with. That grounded place builds the strategic architecture of trust.
Which brings us to the integrity metric. Aligned presence creates natural visibility because people feel the integrity behind the message.
And we have to be clear about how we're defining integrity. We aren't talking about morality or ethics here.
No, in this strategic context, integrity is a tangible business asset. Think about the integrity of a bridge. It means soundness. No weak points, no gaps in the structure.
So structural integrity in communication is the complete elimination of the gap between who you are and how you communicate.
Yes, no gap means high structural integrity, you are solid. But when there is a gap, when you perform a persona, the structural integrity of your brand is fragile. Audiences unconsciously test that structure every time they read your post.
They're looking for the cracks.
Exactly. If they sense a gap, they won't trust the structure enough to walk across it. They won't buy, they won't hire, they won't trust your authority.
Operating from that high integrity place creates 3 highly specific operational outputs. It makes the founder 3 things: easier to recognize, easier to understand, and easier to trust. Let's break those down, starting with easier to recognize.
When you use your natural voice, you automatically cut through the noise of polished imitations. Think about your industry. If everyone is using the exact same forced corporate tone, they blend into a single background hum.
A sea of sameness.
They're reading from the same playbook. By speaking as yourself with your specific cadences, colloquialisms, energy, you become distinct. A recognizable signal in a field of static.
It's the ultimate differentiation strategy, and it costs literally nothing to implement. The second pillar is easier to understand. This is huge because the professional persona often relies on industry jargon and complex phrasing just to sound authoritative.
We think sounding complicated makes us sound smart.
Right, but it's backward.
Complexity is a hiding place. Drop the persona, and you naturally drop the jargon. You communicate directly, like you're explaining it to a peer over coffee. Stop proving intelligence through vocabulary and start proving value through clarity.
It removes the friction of comprehension. Make it easy for them to actually grasp the message. And the third pillar is easier to trust. Trust is the ultimate currency. It converts a listener into a client.
Showing up unvarnished builds connection because the audience feels safe. They know they're interacting with reality, not a fabrication. They don't have to wonder if it's a well-crafted marketing avatar. Transparency breeds immense trust.
Which brings us to the execution phase. The directives we pulled from the research are simple, but they require you to actively abandon the safety of that professional filter. The directive for you today is to share something, one piece of content, one email that reflects your real voice and tone.
The primary objective is removing the pressure to impress. That is the mental shift. You don't need to impress anyone today. You just need to show up clearly. Dismantle the version of yourself you think you are supposed to be online.
Practically speaking, though, how do you do that? If you're staring at a blank screen, terrified of hitting publish on something raw, how do you push past the friction?
Start by auditing your drafts. Look at an email you're about to send. Read it out loud. Does it sound like words that would actually come out of your mouth in a face-to-face conversation?
If you wouldn't say it in a coffee shop, don't type it on LinkedIn.
Exactly. If your natural tone is casual, lean into it. If it's blunt and direct, lean into that. Stop softening your edges. The friction comes from trying to be something you are not.
It's about building a daily practice of authenticity. Choosing honesty over performance is the only way to build sustainable visibility. If you want a presence that serves your business 5, 10 years down the road, it has to align with who you are, or you will burn out.
It is an operational necessity. You cannot afford the energy expenditure required to be someone else. And as we conclude, I want to leave you with a final strategic question to carry into your next content creation session. Think about the tension you feel when creating content. What if the very quirks, natural tones, and informalities you are actively trying to edit out of your professional persona are the exact signals of integrity your audience requires to genuinely trust you?
If you're ready to build visibility that feels aligned and sustainable, visit 365 Freedom online to join the community. This has been a 365 Freedom strategy session.